But the Eisenhower meeting occurred in February of 1954 when Eisenhower disappeared from the media, who, speculation ran wild. One even reported that he had died of a heart attack, which wasn't true. A cover story apparently was put out that he had an emergency dental visit, but researchers tracked that down and basically debunked that. And the more research that's been done on this by an army of researchers really have looked into this. And the vast majority of them have come away convinced that there was a meeting with Eisenhower and many high-level officials within science, government, business, even some UFO researchers. Gerald Light, I believe, was one of them. But supposedly some really high-level people in rocketry and so forth were there. And UFOs came down and landed, put on a display. Reportedly, Eisenhower and others were taken on board. The ET showed how they could turn their craft transparent. And there was sort of an impasse because the reason for this meeting was twofold on the part of the ETs. They wanted us to disclose the ET presence and stop messing around with nuclear weapons, whereas we did not want to do either of those, and we wanted ET tech, which they said no. And there's what I consider to be disinformation being inserted in this story, that there was some sort of agreement reached where we allowed ETs to take people on board in exchange for technology, a treaty of sorts, which I don't believe is true. Dolly Saffron actually asked her ET contacts about that, and they said, no, we would never give technology to a government that has a long, heinous history of abusing any technology and using it for ill purposes. So there's disinformation that has been inserted into this story, but I do believe it did happen. I think the reporting on it is just getting better and better as time goes on.
And President Jimmy Carter, who just passed away, saw a UFO. Is that correct at one point?
Yes, I believe this was right before he was governor. Kudos to him for coming forward, because Dennis Kucinich talked about seeing a UFO while he was running his nomination for president, and it basically killed his chances. But Carter survived it. He was with a group of people outside, I think it was the Lions Club, 7 or 8 of them, 12, saw this brilliant object low on the horizon, flaring up, colorful lights, finally moving off. There have been debunkers who've tried to explain this first as Venus. That didn't pan out. Others have tried to explain it as a barium cloud or from a rocket launch or something along those lines, which Carter himself denied. He was very much impressed by it. He submitted his sighting to UFO organizations and has always been very upfront about it. And in fact, said he would do his best to get this subject treated with more truth and transparency, but then clamped down on it. There's all sorts of rumors that he was pretty shocked to find out what's going on behind the scenes. We never did hear the full story. But yeah, kudos to him for stepping forward. Very few politicians have. A few have. Senator Russell from, I think, Virginia did. Governor Gilligan from Ohio went forward with his sighting. Ronald Reagan, when he was governor, had a sighting. Quite a few heads of state. The president of Mexico had a sighting. There was a president of a republic in the Russia area, Ilyamanov, I think was his name, who said he was fully taken on board and had conversations with human-looking ETs. So there are some heads of state who absolutely come forward and talked about this. But here in the U.S., or anywhere in the world, we have yet to have a sitting head of state admit to the reality of UFOs.
It seems like President Trump is probably going to possibly admit to the reality of non-human intelligence. According to a lot of people are saying that it could happen within the next 4 months. What have you heard about this?
Yeah, I've heard the same rumors. You can, he's mentioned it several times, and he's always been very much on the fence about it, saying he's not himself sure, but has talked to people who he finds quite credible, which is sort of, again, being on the fence about it. It's not that hard. Just say, that you believe it or don't. So I'm hoping he will. He is a bit of a maverick. He's definitely shaking things up. I think if anyone has the potential to do it, it would be him, because the time is right. It's now reached a point where we have enough evidence to prove this phenomena in the public arena.